Good morning, friends. Today I want to talk about the opportunity cost of doing nothing. I think this is something that's often it's not even, I wanted to say underestimated or undervalued, but I want to say it's not, or most of the time it's not even something people consider. And I mean specifically in I suppose in politics and in planning, things like that, people generally, if you're opposing something, the opportunity cost of not doing whatever you're opposing should be factored in, and I feel like it usually isn't. And I see this everywhere, and one of the things I like about Hong Kong, where I am now, is that they just kind of build like crazy. Everything, like, not at the same scale as China, but like mainland China, but like stuff gets built, infrastructure, just things get built. They're not afraid to take on big projects and build. I think the current so-called northern metropolis that they're building on the border to China next to Shenzhen is an example of that. And that's something I like about here. The obvious downside is that there's always construction sounds. No matter where you are, there's always construction going on, and you're always listening to construction sounds, and that's also a factor of the density. But you know, it's a trade-off that you just have to kind of accept. But obviously I lived in the UK before, and being from Iceland originally, and having lived in Canada and Europe in general, I think the things that I see over there is this tendency to have very, I wanted to say rigorous, but let's say maybe overly bureaucratic planning systems, which result in it's very hard to build things, and opposing building things or doing things. And this is I mean, my theme here is building housing and infrastructure, but this also applies to other things. Any kind of big project that's or big change that might have downsides or might have some short-term pain, it's very easy to oppose these kind of things. In Iceland, I see this with infrastructure, so building new hydro plants, for example, hasn't happened in a long time. It doesn't really happen nowadays. It's been constantly being opposed. Even wind turbines, just general sort of infrastructure. It seems to take forever to get anything approved. Now, Iceland is not as bad as the UK when it comes to this. The UK is, I think, somewhat exceptional with their track record of, I guess the worst examples are going to be HS2, high-speed train to the north, and the tunnel under the Thames that's now finally been approved. And what else is there? Just infrastructure in general, like water reservoirs, prisons, just any type of infrastructure. These projects, they tend to take a long time to get through planning, and even if they do, during construction there seem to be a lot of problems that come up where the people who oppose it, which are often just the local people who are affected by it, which is totally understandable, by the way. I mean, I wouldn't want a train track going next to my house. Who would, right? They, like, even during the construction and during the process, things get derailed and opposed to the point where costs can start overrunning, which they do anyway, but costs start overrunning, and like we saw with HS2, like eventually parts of the project get scrapped. So Yeah, there's endless examples of this, and I think the UK is particularly bad. Iceland's not quite as bad, but still pretty bad. And I think sorry, there's a cat very loud here. It's like a lawnmower. Yeah, I think the core theme is that like it's always easy. Like even in a professional setting, like it doesn't matter what it is. It's always easy to oppose things. It's much easier to say, "Hey, let's do this," and then come up with reasons to do this, whatever that might be. It's always much harder to do that and then argue for doing something than being against doing something. It's always easy to shut things down and say we don't want to do this, etc. So like I've worked in companies where during when you're planning something, a project, I think this actually might come from Amazon, I'm not sure, but it's a pretty good value that, or like a way of working that they had, which is if you are planning a project, you have to constructively engage with the planning process. You can't just be like, no, let's not do this doesn't work. You have to say like, okay, well, what else would you do instead then, or how else, or what other way would you do this project? And I always thought that was really good. So you can't just go around fault finding. You need to constructively engage with the process. And I think I mean, the reasoning behind having a value like this, or like a way of working like this, is obvious, because like I said, it's so easy to just say, well, if we do this, then this might happen, and then like these people will suffer and be unhappy, or oh, if we do this thing, then that other group, or if we do this, this environment, which is very special, whatever, which by the way can often be true, will be affected. So I think, in my opinion, we don't look enough at, okay, we're not going to do this. What does that mean? And I think a lot of the issues we're seeing nowadays in the world are downstream of this. I think the tendency to say, well, okay, if we do this thing, then it will cause problems, and therefore let's not do anything, because that has been the status quo, especially in Europe, for so long now. I think we're really seeing the negative effects of that. And an example of that is the UK, where I think in Kent now there's no running water, and that's not new. We've known that Kent doesn't have big water reservoirs and has had water issues almost every summer for years now. This is not like a new issue, but it still hasn't been fixed. Building homes around Cambridge is another one. Again, water is the issue. We need to build new water reservoirs. But it's when you don't do things, eventually, after a long enough time of not doing a lot of things, then yeah, there's gotta be problems, and it's something that compounds over time, because every project you do usually enables a lot of other things, and that cost over time of not doing things therefore compounds, because the things that you didn't enable don't happen either. So yeah, it's a compounding process. So when we have like 25 years of inaction being then, this is another rant, the sort of adult in the room energy that we get from a lot of leaders, especially in Europe, over the last sort of 20 years, where inaction seems like somehow the moderate choice of preserving stability. That's, I think, yeah, I think that's when you start to really see like trouble, basically. So yeah, TLDR, I think we should be very explicit about, oh, if we don't do something, what does that cost us? Opportunity cost. It's totally undervalued. It's very rarely discussed. And I feel like if people in politics or media or even in a democratic society are opposing something, there should be it should be a constructive process, not we don't want to do this. It should be we don't want to do this, but we want to do this instead, or we don't want to do it this way, we want to do it this way instead. I think that should be the process, and there should be accountability. And I think lastly, if a company or maybe not company, but if a government wants to build something and some private individual sues and halts the project, the cost of that should ultimately land on that individual if that is the case. Because I think it's absurd that the legal system can be used as a way to hold big important projects that benefit society hostage. I think that's ridiculous. That's really bad. But I think that maybe this is another video as well, on how the legal system can be used like that. If you're not following the Lego Brexit minifix situation, highly recommend searching for that on YouTube and following that. It's the craziest thing I've seen in ages. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Thanks for listening. Bye.